Yes.
Yep. Elm Street is the original, like, Bristol path. It connects to 138, and County Street wasn't there. So this was the way that you would travel to go over to Bristol, Rhode Island.
Huh. And perhaps the way that the natives also went?
Yes. Yep.
If they were going to Bristol.
The house right here is Rufus Whitmarsh. It's one of the older houses in Dighton.
You would know this because you did the genealogy on this house.
I haven't done this one yet.
Oh, okay.
But Ezra Stiles did stay here
Oh.
during the Revolutionary War. He came from Newport. Ezra Stiles.
Oh, really?
Yep.
Yeah, because he was a pastor at our church.
Right,
Pastor at our
right.
church, yeah.
So he lived here for a short period of time, and then he also lived up on a house on Milk Street too, before he went to New Hampshire.
And then Greg is a little bit younger, right?
No.
And these were my brother's age.
So like that.
Yeah, so I got it.
That's what's left.
Whoa!
Yeah.
We used to play here as a kid. It was in full.
Oh yeah, we used to climb here, picnic here. Yep, yeah. We're going up to the Council Oak, Mom. Because I grew up down on Pleasant Street.
I don't know what they are, honestly.
So
There's-
that's it. It
there's
got
one-
struck by lightning.
There's one out there,
Um,
one over there.
Now, what was the name of the Indian settlement near here?
Oh, look at all this.
It would have been one of the Pocassets.
But you don't
because-
know. You don't.
no.
You didn't have a particular village.
No.
name?
There's a hat thing or stuff they did here.
The story goes that there are like a lot of arrowheads and stuff when you dig up the fields. They did do some gravel pitting over here and back there.
So I can add to that. So I grew up on Brook Street, which we passed a hill where the high tension wires are. You go up over the hill, and that's where we lived. And on both sides of us, well, that was at the farm of my great-grandparents, and all through my childhood, as soon as the fields were plowed, cars, strangers would just stop on the side of the road. And literally, you know, small little ranch we live in, you open your window on a Saturday morning, it's like, oh my God, there's people in the field right next door. And yeah, they'd just go through, and I mean, many arrowheads came out of just there.
Yeah, over Mrs. Walker, who used to live on Elm Street.
Yes.
She had the Dighton Rock Farm.
Right.
Yes.
And she had I used to go over there as a kid just to look at her collection of all her
Yeah.
pencils.
They would have a great one too because that actually sits up high and overlooks Broad Cove.
Yeah.
So the Native Americans would use that as their high ground.
Yeah, that used to be,
Yeah.
used to be called Hunter's Hill.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, so I mean, Dighton has this huge, you know, Native American history, which really isn't well documented.
Yeah.
You know, we think that it's the Pocassets because they were the ones that were in Fall River.
Yeah.
We know it's not like, you know, from Wareham, the Wampanoags from the Wareham and all of that. You know, there's no connections there.
So Eric today mentioned some Native American researchers that came highly recommended. I wonder if they would, you know, if we should
I think
consult.
it's worth looking, and
Yeah.
there's also a couple of elders still alive. I forget what his name read.
So where does the term segregancia come from?
That's a term. It's a Native American term, and I'm not sure of its meaning. But they called that, like, the Segregated River was, you know, that's what they called it.
Because I remember Mrs. What was her name? Married to the plumber.
Oh, Varley, Mrs. Varley, yeah.
She used to insist that I call that segregancia.
Yeah, because Segregated was that section of Dighton, and now it was like Segregated Village, and it kind of went from, you know, where the hill is that you come up 138 when you're heading south. I'm trying to think. Almost where the driveway for the public library is, the trailer is now. Town Hall, that whole area down to about where the police station is.
The old one?
The new one was called Segregated Village, and it also encompassed Center Street down to the bridge, and then up a little bit on Center Street.
Yeah.
So
They had a post office.
They had a
their
post
own-
office.
Well, I remember going to the post
Yeah.
office and saying, I live in Segregancia. She goes,
Yeah.
you've been talking to Mrs. Volley, haven't you?
So that, because there is, like, you have North Dighton, you have Segregated, there's actually the Broad Cove area, You have West Dighton. You do have these little villages in Dighton, that are known by that. And if you didn't know, part of Dighton, seceded, became the town of Wellington for about 20 years, and they came back together in 1864.
What part was that?
Wellington Street. It was Wellington Street, Center Street, over towards Tremont.
Yep.
Some of Williams. They thought that because there was a split in the church, in the meeting house, there was a
Oh,
disagreement
right,
there.
right, when it burnt down, right?
When it burnt down, they were
Yeah.
going to build a new one because it was
Yeah.
supposed to go kind of in the area of Pine Street
Yeah.
and Brook Street, and kind of like in that area, and there was some disagreement, and that's when the community church got built.
Yeah.
As
Well,
we
this
know
one
now.
mysteriously burnt down,
Right.
and then they built this one.
In the meantime, between that, they were considering that second one.
Yeah. Yeah.
So there were some church issues, because now you have to remember, to be a town early on, state and church were very combined. So your town had to have a church and a minister.
Congregationalist or?
Probably.
Yeah.
Probably.
But you couldn't split unless the main church didn't want you to split because then they'd lose the funding
Right.
for the main church.
Right. It's all about money.
Well,
all
they
about-
came down from Boston,
And
right?
politics.
A group came down from Boston, decided that the church would be built at the lower four corners.
There was a group that came, yeah.
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 So that's how it ended up there.
But also the merchants and the boat owners from down on Pleasant Street and all of that liked that location better because it was closer to
Close to
their
them.
homes than Pine Street
Well,
and Brook
back
Street.
then, people would also come from Berkeley to
Yes.
go to that church.
And they would come over on a
Ferry, yeah. So.
And there was 2 ferry landings. There was one kind of like in back of Gardner's Tire. It
Yeah.
was like the first
Okay.
one, because that's near where the first meeting house was. And then the second one was on one of the wharfs down on Pleasant Street. So they would come over from the Berkeley side, because Berkeley was part of Berkeley was part of Dighton. So they would come over to go to church. There was no County Street, and there wasn't a bridge at first for Pleasant Street and Muddy Cove. So Elkanah Andrews had that bridge built, original wooden bridge that went over Muddy Cove, but that
Yeah.
wasn't there. So they would have to go up like where Hart Street is, down up the Richmond Hill, because there was no County Street, down to come down to the first meeting house.
I would have changed my religion rather than driving.
Oh, no.
Because Mrs. Lane drew a map on that. She was the school teacher.
Yeah,
that
she
lived-
drew.
Yeah, I try to read her book. It's a difficult read.
Yeah, it is a
It is a very difficult read.
Yeah.
There is an index that you can buy through the society that helps, because I find that to read her book, if you know what topic you want or a name that you want to look up, it's easier to read it that way,
Yeah.
because it's very dry.
Yeah.
I agree. So
So do you want to show them how this, that they still meet here and
they still meet
things
here, and
in
you
the
will
church.
see they do leave
There's a thing
their
in there,
tokens.
yeah.
Their tokens here.
There
This
is
is
a big
still a
thing in there.
sacred place for the Native Americans.
Yeah.
They do have ceremonies here. They'll have a drumming ceremony.
Who maintains this for them?
The Native Americans maintain part of it, and the town of Dighton actually owns this now. I don't think they mow it, and they own the fields now.
And so it's recognized in the town of Dighton that
Yeah.
it should be dedicated to
Yep.
to the natives when they
Yeah.
come.
It was, there was talk about this field being developed
Oh, no.
for housing, because there is housing right down there
Yep.
and right over there. They were going to expand that development, but they were able to get a grant to purchase the property, and they worked with the landowners to purchase it, so it worked out well.
Because I used to play here as a kid.
Yeah,
I don't remember.
Yeah, I don't know
back then I
either.
wasn't.
No, no.
It's hard to tell.
Well, I could judge the age by the width.
There is a way to judge the age by the width, and there is also a way, it's funny, we were talking about this the other day with some other people. If you stand, the height of a person next to it, and especially with the living tree, then you can then project like the height of the tree.
You can project the height of
Yeah,
the tree, but
yeah.
the age.
The age is by width.
Because I
mean,
tell you,
there's
many times
pictures.
people assume that a tree is much older than what it is.
Yes.
Yeah.
But oaks do tend to live a long time.
It's council oak,
The remains of the town.
the remains of it.
And you said
Significant
it was
history.
struck by lightning?
Yeah.
But it was perhaps dying.
It was dying before then, and the
sure.
lightning just hastened everything. And they have taken acorns from it and tried to start new trees.
Yeah, well, I think it's not.
I don't think that, you know, that was when it was still like bearing things.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Nice, thank you.
Was it worth it?
Absolutely. Every step.
No, I've heard about this for so many years.
And now you can say, check it off your list of things to do.
Well, no, it's not that. I always assumed it's something else.
Yes, look at